What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the shelf. Merry Christmas and welcome to my list of my top 10 favorite Christmas horror movies of all time. I'm excited to talk about this list today because I only watch Christmas horror films in the month of December. To do anything else would be sacrilege in my opinion, and it becomes something that I look forward to very much every year. Obviously, I watch horror movies year-round, but specifically these movies we're about to talk about today only get watched during the month of December, ideally with some snow on the ground. To me, there's something so cozy about a Christmas horror movie. They have this quality to them that other horror movies just don't have. It's due in large part, I think, to the nature of the holiday, you know? Most of us are off work, hanging out with family, maybe there's snow on the ground depending on where you live, and the only expectation people have of you is to just kind of hang out and do nothing and enjoy the holiday. So what better way to do that than by watching some Christmas horror movies, am I right? I don't know, to me there's just something super relaxing about these movies. The fact that I only watch them in December creates this exclusive sort of quality to the viewing experience, which I really like. These movies are best enjoyed with the lights off, hot chocolate, snow on the ground. So before I get into the list, I just want to say that these are just my favorites. I haven't seen every Christmas horror movie, but I've seen a good amount of them, and this is the list that I arrived at. This list was also kind of hard to put together because although I really love this subgenre, there's like a handful of like really, really good stuff, and then there's also a lot of really bad stuff. And it's stuff that I enjoy, but it's not necessarily something that's going to ever crack like my top 50 horror movies of all time. So like the 7 through 10 slot, I don't feel as strongly about, and then as we ascend the list, the distance between each title gets pretty significant in terms of quality. Obviously, I enjoy every movie on this list, but like 1 through 5 is where they really hit their stride, and those are like the cream of the crop. At the time of this recording, it's still pretty early in the month, so please leave some of your favorite Christmas horror movies in the comments. That way I can maybe watch some of them throughout the rest of the month. That would be really fun. So yeah, if I miss any of your favorites, please let me know and put them in the comments. And then the last thing is that there might be the odd spoiler here and there for some of these movies. I'll provide a warning before I get into any of that, but just be aware that that's something that could happen. So at number 10, we have Better Watch Out from 2016. So this one follows a young kid and he's being babysat by an older girl that he has a crush on. And then throughout the course of the night, he's trying to, woo her, and then some home invaders arrive, and it becomes sort of a home invasion film. So the thing about this movie is that it starts out as one thing, and then around the halfway point, it kind of shifts into something else. So if you haven't seen Better Watch Out, but maybe you might want to, you should probably skip this section because I'm going to kind of go into that. So basically, the home invasion stuff is happening, and you are led to believe that the movie is going to be about the boy and his babysitter, like, fighting off these invaders. But it winds up being revealed that the kid is actually like this incel psycho, and he hired his friend to pretend to be an invader so that the girl would take a liking to him through some weird thought process. I guess was going to try to kind of, basically he was going to try to kind of steer events in such a way so that she would be like dependent on him.
Nurturing dependence. You're gonna want to nurture that dependence that she's feeling on you now, guys.
To help her out of the situation. Doesn't make a lot of sense. However, this plan backfires and then things kind of get pretty quickly out of control. I mainly enjoy this one for its Christmas atmosphere. It's pretty rich in atmosphere, and it also has this sort of Home Alone style to it in terms of how some of the kills play out. So basically you're watching this really shitty kid terrorize his babysitter with the help of his sort of unwilling friend, and then things progressively get, more and more serious, and you're basically watching the whole movie waiting for this shitty kid to kind of get his comeuppance. Basically, like, the theme of the movie is that, this kid is sort of all about like male entitlement, and he has this weird way that he perceives things, and he has this really like negative mindset that sort of makes him sort of feel like, this is how to go about getting this girl to like him. So it's making some statements there about that, about like the male gaze and male entitlement and all that stuff. So I think that's an important message, I suppose. And then the movie itself is kind of fun, and then the ending is a little divisive, so I won't spoil that, but that can make or break the movie for some people. So this one's fun to watch around the holidays. You know, I like the main girl's performance, and some of the kills are noteworthy. It's definitely at the bottom of my list. It just squeaks out at number 10. At number 9, we have Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 3, Better Watch Out. This one's loosely set after the events of Part 2, and Ricky is now in a coma, and he's on life support, and eventually he wakes up from this coma, and he targets this, like, clairvoyant girl who looks an awful lot like Jennifer Connelly, by the way. This one is not, like, a good movie, but when I first watched it a couple years ago, I was kind of impressed by just sort of how weird and eerie and surreal it felt, despite obviously being super low budget, and a part 3 in a super B movie franchise, which is the Silent Night, Deadly Night franchise. I actually ranked all of these movies a while back. One of the first videos I ever did, so if you do decide to watch it, it's super rough. This movie sort of sets the tone for the rest of the movies in this franchise in that they all progressively just get like weirder and weirder. This one stars Bill Moseley as Ricky. He's wearing like this weird brain cap thing because I guess his brains got messed up in the last movie. I don't know. I don't remember that one. Early on, the movie has like this, they're in like a hospital, and it's got this very clinical, sort of sterile look. There's lots of these like really white rooms, and that kind of reminded me of Phenomena a bit as well, especially with, like I said, the main girl, Samantha Scully, looking a lot like Jennifer Connelly. So there's sort of like a visual kinship there, and it's possible that I'm maybe giving this movie a bit of a pass because of that, but, you know, regardless, it works in this context. So basically, this girl is clairvoyant, and the doctors are using her to contact Ricky in his catatonic state. So she sort of possesses that ability, right? So she's able to speak with him and communicate him, and that's ultimately what wakes him up out of his coma. And then, because they now have this kind of link, he decides to go after her, and she is spending Christmas Eve at her grandmother's house with her brother and like his girlfriend. She's blind, but she also has some like telekinetic powers, like I said. So she's the only one who kind of senses that something is off and that maybe Ricky is like coming to get them and like something happened to their grandmom. So she's kind of spending the whole movie trying to convince her brother like that something is off, and then eventually things, hit the climax in the third act. Yeah, this movie is just super bizarre and weird, which is like exactly what I kind of want out of a Silent Night, Deadly Night movie. Those first two are already so ridiculous. So what better way to go with these sequels than to just go completely batshit crazy? And that's exactly what they do. So yeah, actually compared to some of the sequels, this one's pretty tame as far as how weird it gets. So Bill Moseley's kind of playing the anti-Chop Top here. He's very monotone, just got out of a coma. Not a particularly flashy performance, but fans of Bill Moseley will probably enjoy this. Just kind of a weird first role from him to go back and look at and sort of compare to some of his later works and how far he's come. So yeah, Silent Night, Deadly Night 3, it's a good time. It's pretty weird, but give it a shot, you might like it. Number 8 is a movie from 2019 called The Lodge. Spoilers for The Lodge, but there's something that happens early on in this movie that could definitely be considered a spoiler if you haven't seen this movie or seen a trailer for it, so be warned going into this part of the video that there will be some spoilers for The Lodge. This is a good psychological, isolated location horror movie that's really eerie and like plays on, like I said, the psychological side of things. Highly recommend this one. If you don't want any spoilers, again, skip to the next section. So this one follows a pair of siblings and their father who are sort of collectively grieving after their mother sort of out of nowhere unalives herself, played by Alicia Silverstone. I believe she does this because she finds out that the husband is cheating on her. So eventually, the father starts to bring his new girlfriend around. She's, a younger woman, and he tries to sort of introduce the idea of this being a potential new mother figure for his children, but they are not really receptive to the idea at all. So the girlfriend, played by Riley Keough, she's got some trauma. She's got like this sordid past, and she's on medication as a result of this. So after some time's gone by, the father invites Riley Keough's character, who's named Grace, to come spend Christmas with his family at their lodge for the winter break. So eventually something happens and the father has to leave for work, and he leaves Grace with the two children. And at this time, a huge blizzard sweeps in, so they are all condemned and isolated to this lodge. And we know that Grace's character has, some problems mentally, and the children are perhaps tormenting her, trying to, show that they do not want her, they do not welcome her as their mother. And it becomes sort of a situation where it's an unreliable narrator, and you don't know if she's truly losing her mind, or if they're actually tormenting her, or if it just seems like they are because of her devolving mental state. So it's really good, really tense, and really creepy and eerie towards the end. It's really eerie, claustrophobic. It'll leave you sort of wondering what to believe by the time the credits roll. You won't really be sure who to trust, and by the time this one's over, you're going to want to watch like a more conventional Christmas movie, because like I said, this one's very bleak. At number 7, we have Anna and the Apocalypse. This one's about a zombie apocalypse that hits the town of Little Haven, and all of its characters have to sort of survive the apocalypse amidst all the backdrop of like all the Christmas, atmosphere and stuff. This one's also a musical, so that could be a make or break for some people. Some people just don't like musicals, which I totally understand. So if you're that kind of person, maybe skip this one. But if you like musicals, then maybe give this one a shot. It follows the titular Anna and her schoolmates as they're about to graduate high school. The cast of characters is memorable enough, and the songs are a lot of fun, and they're usually choreographed well to like some really good zombie killings. Think like Shaun of the Dead. I think my favorite song is Soldier of War, where one of Anna's schoolmates really is like singing about how much he loves killing zombies. He's just really risen to the occasion, and he's just having a great time just killing them. I really like this one just because of how unique it is. It's got a good message, and in the pantheon of like Christmas horror movies, it's hard to find stuff that actually stands out. So much of it is just like killer Santa Clauses killing people. So when you're able to like really carve out a niche for yourself like this movie does, it's a big positive for me. Coming in at number 6, we have the new kid on the block, Terrifier 3. There may be a bit of recency bias at play here, but for me, Terrifier 3 is just a ton of fun. It basically follows Sienna and her brother as they continue to be terrorized by Art the Clown, only this time it's set during the holiday season. So just the nature of Terrifier, super over the top, very gratuitous, gonna be a movie that I'm not always interested in watching. So that's like the biggest thing that's holding this movie back for me, and it's really just a preference thing. Like, it's not even like the movie's like not directed or executed well, because it is, it very much is, but it's just not something that I'm always going to be in the mood to watch. So, but with that said, it's got really great Christmas atmosphere, especially in the film's cold open. This is going to be like a once in a blue moon kind of thing for me, but I really had a great time seeing this in theaters earlier this year. And overall, I just really respect the like independent filmmaking aspect at play. It utilizes a lot of great Christmas iconography, and it really just doesn't feel like a gimmick to me. It really feels like Art the Clown and Terrifier really lends itself well to the holiday of Christmas. It just makes full use of that idea and just really justifies its existence at the end of the day. Seeing this movie in like a packed theater full of diehard horror fans like really put the experience like over the top for me. So regardless of whether or not this is going to be one of my favorites of all time, you really just can't deny the impact and the influence that these movies are having right now. It's just a cool time to be a horror fan and like see horror winning like this. So out of all the Terrifier movies, it brings me great joy to say that Terrifier 3 is probably my favorite, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's set during Christmas, because it just has such a fun time with that concept. Coming in at number 5, we have the original Silent Night, Deadly Night. This is considered by many to be one of the most classic, iconic Christmas horror movies. It sort of had this cult status when it was pulled from theaters after being in theaters for only a week. People were protesting it and stuff back in the 80s, so this one from day one pretty much had sort of this legacy about it. And it spawned a franchise of increasingly ridiculous movies, some of which have no Christmas qualities to them at all. Some of them have more, some have less. It's really all over the place, and this is where it all started. But yeah, this movie is pretty insane. It follows the story of Billy, and he's a young kid, and on one Christmas Eve, he witnesses his mother and father being, taken out by this rogue Santa Claus, and he then goes into like a Catholic school, and he's further traumatized by these like super overbearing nuns, and it all just kind of coalesces and creates this perfect storm. And then when Billy becomes older, he is very deeply troubled, and then around Christmas time, he just snaps and starts going on this like rampage. Linnea Quigley has a pretty famous kill in this movie. It's a really fun set piece. So if you're a fan of hers, then you'll enjoy seeing her here. Yeah, this one's just insane. It's a crazy 80s holiday slasher, one of the first Christmas horror movies. So yeah, check this one out, and if you're feeling courageous, start to check out some of those sequels, because I'm telling you, like 3, 4, and 5 are completely ridiculous. Coming in at number 4 is Krampus. This one is directed by Michael Dougherty, the guy who brought us Trick or Treat, another holiday classic. This one follows a family gathering, and at this gathering there's a little boy named Max, and he inadvertently summons Krampus, through a direct result of his like failing belief in Santa Claus. So Krampus then descends on this town, and he targets this family, and it becomes like this game of survival against both the winter elements and Krampus's minions, who take the form of all sorts of things, ranging from like gingerbread cookies to like various toy monsters. This one has a really good blend of practical and visual effects. All the monsters and Krampus and everything were designed by Weta Workshops, who's, pretty big deal in the practical effects world. It's got a great cast that really blends comedy and horror really well. Overall, just has this really cozy vibe to it that I really enjoy around this time of year. I might watch this one tonight, actually. We'll see. It also has a really cool ending that I won't spoil here, but I really appreciate it. It's a really cool horror movie ending that I enjoy. This one really captures a lot of the themes of Christmas, but it doesn't skimp out on the kills either, which I really appreciate. And at number 3, we have Gremlins, directed by the great Joe Dante. I mean, what can I say about Gremlins? You have Billy Peltzer, who is gifted this Mogwai, and with this Mogwai comes a special set of rules. Billy inadvertently breaks the rules at some point, and he sets this horde of mischievous gremlins on the town that he lives in. This movie doesn't really require a ton of explanation, in my opinion. We all love Gremlins, let's be real. And some could maybe even argue that this isn't a horror movie. I would say it's definitely horror adjacent, if not downright horror. It's got some scenes that are really creepy, and it also has the whole famous monologue from Phoebe Cates' character, where she explains like why she doesn't like Christmas, and like that shit is messed up. So, definitely a horror adjacent, I would say. Incredible Christmas vibes all the way throughout. Snow on the ground almost in every frame. There's something about like those giant bulbs they used to use. They're captured on film so well. They're massive bulbs, and then there's that filmic quality, and it's very 80s, and it's just very nostalgic, and it really, really hits around this time of year. I mean, it's Gremlins. Do I have to say anything else? And the runner-up on my list of Christmas horror films is A Christmas Horror Story from 2015. This one's an anthology where there's 4 stories and a wraparound, and each story is told intercut with each story, all the way leading up until the finale, where in the third act, all 4 stories are sort of wrapped up in succession. I really admire and like this one because of the anthology component. I particularly like the unorthodox way that they do it, the structure, where normally in anthologies, it'll be one story, the story ends, and then another story starts, ends, another story. This one doesn't do that. All 4 stories sort of are intercut with each other, and they're all connected to each other as well, which really rewards repeat viewings of this one, I would say. I actually did an entire video essay on this one that I did last year that I'm really proud of, so I'll link it somewhere here, and if you want to check that out, I would definitely suggest doing so. So because I did that whole video, I'm not going to go too deep on it here. What I will say, though, is that each story in the anthology feels like a different subgenre of horror, and they all sort of tackle the things that are not necessarily talked about as much, that are connected to the Christmas holiday season, and the negative things that come along with that. This movie can be very creepy at times, and it can also be very funny at times. It's super underrated, I would say, and I've always been a big fan of this one ever since I saw it for the first time back in 2018. I think this one flies under the radar for a lot of people, and it's just really, really good. Obviously, I have it at number 2. It's one I watch every year without exception. And of course, at number 1, we have the godfather of Christmas horror, the OG, Black Christmas. I'm sure this will be no surprise to anyone, but this is hands down the best Christmas horror movie of all time, and it's not even really close either. Like, there is a steep gap between my number one, which is Black Christmas, and everything else. Like, this thing is sort of in a league of its own, in my opinion. This movie is extremely ahead of its time, not only in the way that it sort of helped establish some of the core slasher tenets that would go on to be further cemented in movies like Halloween, and TCM came out the same year, and so on and so forth, Friday the 13th, what have you. But this is so progressive in the way that it sort of brings up conversation, like a major plot point about abortion, to the forefront, in a way when, in a time when that really wasn't very popular to do so. And it also explores the notion that, Olivia Hussey's character, Jess Bradford, wants more for her life than to just sort of be a stay-at-home wife and childbearer for her boyfriend, Peter. It's very sort of women-forward and almost a feminist movie in some ways, I would say. So all these very progressive topics are comfortably nestled in extremely eerie, beautifully shot Christmas horror film, containing some of the most iconic shots in general, like in horror history, are in this movie. I can think of two off the top of my head that I'll try to show right here. I love the way that Billy is left ambiguous. If you know anything about me and my channel up until this point, then you know that I'm all about ambiguity in horror films, and Billy is a prime example of that. We never find out anything about him, and by the time the film is wrapping up, spoiler alert if you haven't seen BC 74, but the way it just ends with him still in the house and Jess is sort of at his mercy, and you don't know how it ends, but you know it's not going to be good, and the poor girl is still up in the damn attic, that with the bag on her head and all that, and it's just so eerie, ends on such a bleak note. I'm not going to go too much more into detail because I do plan on doing an entire video essay breakdown of this movie later this month. So, watch this space and keep an eye open for that. Suffice it to say, though, that if you're looking for Christmas horror, you cannot do better than Black Christmas. So that's my list, guys. Please let me know what you think of my selections. And again, please provide some of your own selections in the comments below. I'm always trying to find more of these, so I definitely want to watch some more of these before the month is over. Please like the video and subscribe if you haven't. We talk about new movies, old movies, physical media, and horror in general. So with all that being said, please take care and watch more Christmas horror films.